Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Human Body Systems training video. My name is Karen Zeminski. Welcome to Unit 2. The good news is that you've already taught all of the foundation skills needed for students to progress through the remainder of this activity, and you've already conquered the experiments that are the most complicated and involve the most preparation for both teachers and students. Let's jump right in and start with Lesson 10. Lesson 10 allows the students to explore how they think the lungs may work. By doing this, they will be able to design, construct, and use a breathing model. They will then have the opportunity to assess the strengths and limitations of various models. This is a skill, comparing different types of models, is a skill that's increasingly important for the next generation science standards as well. One model they're going to use is the bell jar. Now, this is a great example, but you want to be very careful that students don't pull too hard because in this area right here, it can come unattached, and then that will ruin it for the rest of the students. Just make sure that they're not pulling too hard on that bottom piece. Now, for when you're discussing strengths and limitations of your breathing model that the students have built with the syringe, if you're not overly comfortable comparing limitations and strengths, there is a master guide for you to follow in the teacher's book. The key words that you need to highlight as well for this lesson are diaphragm, trachea, alveoli, bronchus, and gas exchange. After making their own model and looking at the bell jar, it's important to discuss these strengths and limitations, so make sure you don't skip over that part. Moving to Lesson 11 is actually one of my favorite activities because it allows the students to create a tool that measures how much air each person exhales, and then they get to use it to assess themselves and their partners. And it actually leads to a very productive lesson and discussion around limiting factors such as obesity, smoking, and asthma, as well as positive factors for breathing such as sports training. One thing you want to make sure of is that you're using the correct tubing. So when we did the digestion activity with the tubing, we used the longer tube that was open on both ends. Now is when you're going to use the shorter tube that is sealed on one end. You want to make sure that you're using the correct tube for this, and you want to make sure that you locate the liter ruler in the kit. Be sure that the tubing has a sealed end and that that's where you're going to start making your measurements. Now, as you start here, you want to start with 6 liters and progress down. Now, the liter ruler looks just like this in the kit, and you can tell it's very separate from the other rulers, but it's easy to overlook. Each student will get their own cardboard mouthpiece that will go inside of the plastic mouthpiece. You just want to make sure that students are taping the plastic mouthpiece on nice and tight so that there's no air leaking out. And I also have them write their names on the cardboard piece so that it doesn't get lost or so that they don't accidentally use one another's. And then you're ready to start. It's also a perfect time to have students use their data to compare with their group members and other groups and talk about things like who lives with a smoker, who plays sports, and such. Moving on to Lesson 12. Cellular respiration is an investigation that some people choose to do during the digestion unit because they feel that's where it's most appropriate. No matter where you do it, it's definitely a key piece for kids to understand. It's also complicated for some students. They'll start to learn that cellular respiration is a form of oxidation, as is combustion, and then they're going to use an indicator to detect the common waste product of each and determine the form of energy released during exhalation. This chapter has a series of short experiments, starting with the candle activity. It's pretty straightforward, and it's one the kids have probably seen before. But as a side note, you want to be very sure that you fully dilute the bromothiol blue according to the directions. You actually have enough for way more than is needed. What you're going to do is set this little scene up, and you're going to light the candle, cover the top with tin foil, and as the candle starts to burn out, kids are making predictions and hypotheses about what happened and what the waste product was, what was removed, etc. The second part of this is going to show the students how they're going to be able to track the path of air they exhale, and once it touches that chemical indicator again, there's going to be a color change. Now, finally, they're going to spend some time comparing and contrasting what they've learned about combustion. And when they're doing this, about combustion and cellular respiration, when they're doing this, you want to make sure that you bring it back to the fact that this is just a model, to keep the students talking about how to understand models in different ways. Next is lesson 13. This can also be done in conjunction with the digestion lessons as well, if you'd like. In this lesson, students are going to make the connection between what they eat and how cellular respiration works in their body. This lesson uses fire, and the students are going to be burning food to determine its calories based on the heat that it puts off, and that it has, and you want to also be very clear with students who have certain allergies, and make sure that you alert the nurse that you're going to do this as well. We no longer use nuts, but you are going to be using marshmallows and seeds. Some students these days are even having allergies and sensitivities to the smoke coming from the seeds. So just be very careful. You also want to give very specific directions on how to hold the test tube clamp. I had a student get nervous once and squeeze it, and they squeezed it too much and it fell and it shattered all over the table. This is how the students are going to first ignite their food. We're going to start with the marshmallow. Notice that the student is using the needle to hold it over the flame. Once it's lit, they're going to hold it underneath the test tube. You want to make sure this person's not having their hand too close and not squeezing too tight. And overall, this is what it looks like. The test tube will get black, and I got so nervous the first time this happened. But most of the time, the students are so worried that they're finally using fire that they were extra careful. And this is what it should look like, and it actually gives some very interesting results. A great connection is the following day. I do the exact same thing, and I have students bring in whatever their favorite snack is. So we end up lighting on fire all different types of Doritos and chips, and they can actually see the oil and fat dripping out of the food. And it tends to be a very powerful lesson. Now, lesson 14 is called the pumping heart. The pumping heart is the main lesson for understanding the structure of the heart and the direction of blood flow. Once again, students are going to use the models, and they're going to demonstrate the direction of blood flow in the body. This can get messy because the water starts to spray out of the tub or the pump falls over, so make sure you have lots of paper towels on hand. The students will start out with one pump, and then they add another. My students have a hard time picturing the heart and the body as well, versus looking at it head on. So you want to make sure that you remind them it's like a mirror image. Now, this is the apparatus they're going to use for the modeling, and you have red food coloring to make this water simulate blood. After this activity, Pepe and Bolo will start to introduce the idea of twin pumps in the heart and help to name the atria and the ventricles for the students. During this reading, students can double check their worksheet that was completed during the activity to make sure that they had everything labeled correctly. Now, because I'm a frustrated artist, I find it useful to link the blood cell delivery system back to the digestive and respiratory systems during this time by using visuals as well. So this is just one way that I remind them all of the systems are linked together because we have different types of nutrients and different gases all traveling on the red blood cell to move through the body. Lessons 15 and 16. During these two lessons, students are going to basically do an extension of understanding their body. So the lessons will explore factors that affect heart rate. Roller coasters, being scared, playing sports, all of these things increase your heart rate. But things like obesity, high cholesterol, and high blood pressure cause resistance. So by learning how to take their own pulse, students can also do some of these things to alter their own heart rate. As a connection, I let them design their own mini obstacle courses sometimes that will increase their heart rate. And then they'll have a partner take their resting heart rate, complete their course, and take their ending heart rate to see what kind of